Elisa is a high school student, someone who blends in effortlessly with the crowd. Though she prefers to keep a low profile, she's academically gifted and excels in every subject she's enrolled in. Teachers admire her for her focus and intellect, but her classmates see her as distant and reserved. She has a group of friends, but they never seem to really understand her. The conversation always feels like a performance one she can't quite commit to. At lunch, she's often seen sitting by herself, reading, or lost in her thoughts. Her peers gossip about her being aloof, unaware that it's not disinterest, but a deep sense of being out of place that keeps her apart. Her internal conflict is palpable. She feels like she's living two completely different lives. In the daylight hours, Elisa is a student who wants nothing more than to blend in, avoid attention, and simply be left to her own devices. But as soon as the sun sets, Elisa disappears and Kristin emerges. The transformation isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. By day, she's just another teenager, but by night, she's a powerful shaman, someone who can peer into the future, see people's deepest fears, and help them navigate their lives through spiritual guidance. But Kristin's life is a secret one that she guards fiercely. Every time Elisa slips into her shamanic persona, she's reminded of the price she pays for having such power. Her peers at school think they know her, but they don't. No one knows about her late-night rituals or the weight of her responsibility. It's isolating, and Elisa feels the pressure of this dual existence every single day. She wonders if she'll ever find a way to reconcile these two parts of herself, or if she'll be forever torn between who she is and who she's becoming. The secret of Kristin. Kristin's nightly routine is nothing like the life Elisa leads during the day. After school, she retreats to a small, hidden room in her house, one that no one else is allowed to enter. Here, the transformation takes place. Elisa sheds her school clothes, donning robes that are imbued with spiritual energy. She performs a ritual of cleansing, burning incense to clear her mind and ready herself for the work ahead. Kristin is a shaman of renown, respected in spiritual circles, and her clients come from far and wide. They seek her out for answers to questions of love, wealth, health, and life or death decisions. They want to know if they should pursue a relationship, invest in a business, or make a life-changing choice. But these answers aren't simple, and the weight of each decision Kristin makes hangs heavy on her heart. Kristin's work is draining, physically and emotionally. Each client she helps leaves an imprint on her soul. She channels energy from the spiritual world, allowing the spirits to guide her in offering counsel. Some sessions are easy, offering clear visions and answers, but others are murky, filled with uncertainty and complex emotional TIs. It's in these moments of uncertainty that Kristin feels most vulnerable, when she's unsure whether her guidance will truly help or lead to more pain. In some ways, her work brings her peace, but it also leaves her with a lingering sense of detachment. She's a helper, but she's also a conduit, a vessel for the spiritual world. It's a role that demands objectivity, which doesn't always align with her growing empathy for her clients. Despite her reputation as a strong, calm presence, Kristin finds herself at odds with her own emotions. She wants to help people, but she's torn between her duties as a shaman and the growing emotional connection she feels to the people she helps. Her powers aren't without consequence. Each time she uses her abilities to peer into someone's life, she feels a part of herself slipping away. It's as if she's giving pieces of her soul to her clients, leaving her more fragmented each time. And when someone asks about their future, Kristin knows it's not always possible to change it. Fate is powerful, and sometimes, no matter how hard she tries, the future unfolds as it's meant to. Kristin's reputation as a shaman is well known, but it comes with its own challenges. There are always those who don't believe in her powers, those who question her methods, or those who seek her for less than honorable reasons. But Kristin doesn't let the negativity affect her. She's grown accustomed to the whispers and the skepticism. She knows that for every person who doubts her, there are many more who believe in her gifts. And that's enough to keep her going. Kristin's abilities go far beyond the ordinary. She doesn't just read tarot cards or perform simple rituals, she is capable of seeing into the future, sensing the hidden emotions of those around her, and even communicating with spirits from the other side. When she closes her eyes, visions flood her mind, flashes of events yet to come, moments of joy, sorrow, and everything in between. The future is a shifting puzzle, and Kristin is tasked with helping her clients navigate its complexities. Her power to read a person's aura is one of her most unique abilities. By simply touching someone or gazing into their eyes, she can sense their true emotions, their fears, their desires. It's like looking beneath the surface of their soul, understanding them in ways no one else can. This gives Kristin an edge in her work. She can offer advice that resonates deeply because she knows the truth about the person seeking her guidance. But Kristin's gifts come with a price. With every vision she receives, she feels herself growing more weary. The spiritual energy she channels takes a toll on her body, and her connection to the physical world becomes more tenuous. She can't afford to show weakness, not to her clients, and certainly not to herself. She must remain composed, even as her powers demand more from her than she's willing to give. Despite her strength, Kristin feels torn between the coldness required to do her work and the compassion she feels for the people she helps. Her powers allow her to guide others, but they also isolate her. She can see the future, yet she cannot always prevent it. She can offer comfort, but she cannot change the fundamental truths of the world. As much as she tries to remain detached, she finds herself caring for her clients, empathizing with their struggles, and wishing she could do more to help them. Foreshadowing the connection with Paul. In the midst of her busy nights as Kristin, Elisa begins to experience strange dreams and visions about a man she's never met. In these dreams, she sees a face familiar yet distant, and feels an intense emotional connection to him. At first, she dismisses these visions as mere coincidences or products of her overworked mind. But as time goes on, the dreams become more vivid, more urgent. In them, she sees the man's fate. Something tragic is going to happen to him, but she can't quite make sense of the details. The dreams are disconcerting, and Elisa begins to feel a pull towards someone she hasn't met. She's never been one to believe in such deep spiritual connections outside of her work. But these dreams feel real, and the feelings she has for this unknown person are overwhelming. Each morning, she wakes with a sense of dread, as if something is about to change. Her thoughts drift to the man from her dreams, and she wonders if she'll ever meet him. Is he real, or is he just a product of her powers, another person whose fate she can see but can never reach? As she navigates her day-to-day life at school, Elisa starts to notice hints of this man Paul around her. There are subtle signs: a name she hears spoken by a friend, a face she sees in the hallway, a chance encounter in a crowded room. But it's only when she sees him for the first time that she realizes her visions were more than just dreams. He is real, and she feels an overwhelming urge to protect him, to save him from the fate she saw in her visions. Generated prompt image. Size 16:9. This section of the story sets the stage for Elisa Kristin's emotional and spiritual journey. It introduces her struggle with her dual life, builds her reputation as a shaman, and foreshadows the deep connection she will eventually share with Paul. Through vivid imagery, emotional conflict, and spiritual revelations, this act should create a strong foundation for the rest of the narrative. Paul and his mother arrive. It's an ordinary evening for Kristin, or at least it starts that way. She's in the middle of a session with the client when the door of her spiritual space opens. Paul Bai and his mother, Yumi, step inside. Kristin, as always, immediately picks up on the emotions they carry with them. Yumi looks worried, her face drawn with concern, while Paul carries a quiet tension in his posture, a weight he seems to bear without ever speaking about it. Yumi is soft-spoken, almost apologetic, as she explains their visit. Her son, Paul, has been experiencing unsettling feelings, strange dreams, a sense of foreboding, and a physical unease that no doctor has been able to explain. He's only recently started showing these symptoms, but they're persistent. Yumi insists that something is wrong, something beyond the ordinary. Despite her reservations about seeking out a shaman, she's desperate for answers, having heard of Kristin's abilities from a trusted friend. Kristin welcomes them in, her professional demeanor slipping into place as she guides them through the ritual of the reading. As they sit before her, she feels the familiar energy shift, the way it always does when a new client arrives. But there's something different this time, something palpable in the air that makes her heart skip a beat. Paul's energy is strangely familiar, like she's already connected to him in ways she can't explain. She closes her eyes, preparing herself for what's to come. The vision comes quickly, like a thunderclap in her mind, shattering the calm atmosphere of the room. It's vivid, horrifying. She sees Paul's death, unexpected, violent, and inevitable. She sees flashes of his future, a car crash, an ominous figure, a moment of pure terror. But the details are fuzzy, she can't see the specifics clearly. There's something blocking her from understanding the full vision, a veil that keeps her from knowing the exact moment of his demise. Her heart races, and for a moment, she almost gasps aloud. The weight of what she's seen presses heavily on her chest. She opens her eyes, trying to steady her breath, her hands shaking ever so slightly. Paul looks at her with curiosity, unaware of the depth of what she's just witnessed. "Kristin?" Yumi's voice breaks through the heavy silence. "What did you see?" Kristin quickly regains her composure, but the vision lingers in her mind, haunting her. "There's something dark hanging over Paul's future," she says, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. "I cannot see everything clearly, but I sense a danger coming, a time where he could be in grave harm." She tries to maintain her usual calm, but inside, she's shaken to the core. She's seen many dark futures, but this one feels different, personal. Yumi presses for more details, but Kristin hesitates. She doesn't want to tell them too much. She doesn't want to scare them, especially not Paul. "So," she says, "I suggest you keep him safe, away from risky situations. Watch for signs, and trust your instincts." She doesn't offer much else, knowing it's not enough to ease their minds, but it's all she can offer. After the session, Kristin watches them leave, feeling an unsettling sense of dread settling into her bones. She can't shake the feeling that this is just the beginning, that the path ahead for Paul is already set in motion, and that she's somehow connected to it. Kristin's emotional conflict as the days pass. Kristin can't shake the image of Paul's death from her mind. It's been years since she's allowed herself to feel anything for a client, but something about Paul's case is different. He's been haunting her thoughts, even in the quiet moments of her day-to-day life. At school, she can't focus on her assignments because her mind keeps drifting back to him, his face, his energy, the way he looked at her during the reading. He's not just any client. He's someone she's now tied to in a way she doesn't fully understand. Kristin is accustomed to keeping a professional distance, both from her clients and her own emotions. She's always prided herself on her ability to remain detached, to be the guide without becoming personally involved. But with Paul, it's not so simple. The vision she saw, though vague, has begun to crystallize in her mind. The danger she felt surrounding him is not just something that can be ignored. She can't sit idly by and watch him die, not when she has the power to potentially stop it. Every night she returns to her spiritual space. Her thoughts are filled with Paul. She tries to work with her other clients, but she finds herself distracted, wondering if she should do anything to intervene in his fate. But as a shaman, she knows she must be careful. She cannot let emotions cloud her judgment. Changing fate comes with consequences, and she's not sure she's prepared for the cost. Her internal conflict grows as the vision of Paul's death becomes stronger, clearer. She begins to feel like she's being pulled toward him, not just as a shaman, but as a woman who cares deeply about him. The boundaries between her two identities begin to blur, and Kristin finds herself questioning what it means to be a shaman and what it means to be human. A mysterious dream one night, after a long day of consultations and feeling emotionally drained, Kristin falls into a restless sleep. In her dreams, she sees Paul not as the worried young man who visited her, but as someone who is deeply intertwined with her fate. The dream is vivid. She stands in a forest, a quiet, dark place that feels both familiar and unknown. Paul is standing beside her, and they are holding hands. It's an intimate moment, but it's laced with an undeniable sadness. In the dream, Kristin sees flashes of a future with Paul. There's a connection between them, one that transcends just client and shaman. She sees the two of them together, laughing, sharing moments of happiness. But then the vision shifts, and Kristin sees the same tragedy she foresaw during the reading. Paul is hurt badly. She can't stop it. She's helpless, unable to intervene. When Kristin wakes, the dream lingers, and she feels a tightness in her chest. The emotional pull she feels toward Paul is undeniable. The connection between them, both spiritual and emotional, is growing stronger by the day. She can no longer deny it. Paul's reaction the next day. Paul approaches Kristin after class. There's a look in his eyes that betrays his curiosity and concern, and Kristin can tell that he's been thinking about their last meeting. He's not the type to believe in psychic visions, but something about the way Kristin spoke to him, the conviction in her voice, made him think twice. "Kristin," Paul says, his tone hesitant but sincere, You were right about some things. Strange things have been happening to me. I've been feeling off, and, well, it's hard to explain." Kristin's heart skips a beat. She doesn't know how to respond. She's been trying to keep her distance, but now, seeing Paul stand before her with an earnestness she didn't expect, her resolve starts to slip. Paul continues, "I don't know what to make of it all. I didn't want to believe what you said, but after some of the things I've experienced, I'm starting to wonder if there's more to it than I thought. You said I might be in danger. What exactly did you mean by that?" Kristin feels a surge of emotion, her mind racing. She's torn between wanting to help him and fearing that doing so will pull her even further into his fate. She wants to tell him everything, to be honest, but the words won't come. "I can't explain it all," she says finally, her voice quieter than she intends. "But I think there's something in your future that's out of your control. Something dangerous." Paul looks at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. He doesn't fully understand, but there's a deeper connection between them now. Something about Kristin resonates with him in a way that no one else ever has. He doesn't know why, but he feels like he can trust her, even though he doesn't understand why she's so guarded. "I don't know why, but I feel like you're the only one who truly understands me," Paul says softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Kristin is silent, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She's drawn to him more than she wants to admit, and she knows she can't ignore this connection anymore. But the more she gets involved, the more dangerous it becomes. This section deepens the emotional complexity between Kristin and Paul. The tension builds as Kristin struggles with her growing feelings for Paul and the vision she can't escape. Paul's increasing awareness of his fate and his connection with Kristin creates a foundation for the emotional and spiritual challenges to come. Paul joins her class the day after their fateful encounter. Kristin walks into school with a heavy heart, still shaken by the vision she saw and the feelings she's struggling to suppress. She doesn't expect anything unusual, just another day of teaching, another day of hiding her true self from the world. But when she steps into her classroom, her world tilts. There, standing near the back of the room with a slight air of confusion, is Paul. The very same Paul she saw in her visions. The same Paul who she's been thinking about constantly since their last meeting. He's here at her school, in her class. Kristin's heart skips a beat, her breath momentarily catching in her throat. She's startled by his presence, but tries to mask it. She doesn't want anyone to notice her reaction, especially not Paul. She keeps her eyes down, pretending to gather papers as she quietly walks to the front of the classroom. But her mind is racing. How is this possible? Why is he here? Paul seems equally surprised, but quickly hides it behind a blank expression. He doesn't recognize Kristin as the shaman he met the other night. To him, she's just another teacher. Still, something about her gaze, her voice, even the way she carries herself feels strangely familiar. It's like he's met her before, or at least knows her in some deeper, inexplicable way. Kristin can feel his eyes on her, and it sends a shiver down her spine. She knows they have crossed paths before, but Paul doesn't. He looks at her with a quiet curiosity, as if trying to place her, but doesn't ask anything. Instead, he walks to an empty seat, sits down, and pulls out his notebook, just like any other new student would. Kristin tries to remain calm, but the tension in the room is palpable. She begins her lesson, her voice sounding hollow to her own ears as she speaks. Her mind is on anything but the lesson in front of her. She keeps catching glimpses of Paul out of the corner of her eye. Every time she looks at him, she feels that pull, that connection. It's as if she's unable to break free from the bond they share, even if he doesn't understand it yet. Building tension as the days pass, the tension between Kristin and Paul continues to grow. They interact more than Kristin would like, and it becomes harder to avoid the undeniable connection that's developing between them. Paul starts seeking her help more and more, whether it's for clarification on homework assignments or simply to ask her questions during class. He's often the last to leave after lessons, lingering by her desk to discuss assignments or talk about his struggles with school. Kristin feels a mixture of frustration and desire to remain distant. Every time Paul approaches her, she feels the weight of her knowledge about his future pressing down on her. She knows what's coming, she knows his fate, but she can't tell him. She can't warn him. She's a shaman, but she's also a woman who is emotionally drawn to him, and it's tearing her apart. Their conversations are often brief, but filled with the kind of unspoken tension. Paul talks to her with the kind of earnestness that makes it hard for Kristin to stay detached. It's not just about school anymore. He starts confiding in her, talking about his own life, his struggles at home, his relationship with his parents, his feelings of displacement in the world. Kristin finds herself listening intently, something she hasn't allowed herself to do with any of her clients. She feels the tug of something deeper, something that connects them more than just teacher and student. She begins to care for him in a way she shouldn't, and it complicates everything. She continues to fight against it, but the connection only deepens. There are moments when their eyes meet, and Kristin feels her breath catch. The pull between them is undeniable. Every time he laughs, every time their hands accidentally brush while reaching for the same paper, it's like an electric charge, and Kristin feels it in every fiber of her being. But every time she catches herself, she retreats, trying to keep her distance. She can't afford to let herself fall for him, not when she knows how things will end, not when she knows she could be the one to cause it by getting too close. The emotional struggles, Kristin's internal conflict becomes even more pronounced as she spends more time with Paul. Her emotions are a tangled mess. She longs to be with him, to protect him, to keep him from the fate she saw in her visions. But she also knows that doing so could disrupt everything. She could risk losing her powers, her connection to the spiritual world, if she alters fate too much. The images of Paul's tragic death continue to invade her thoughts. She sees them in flashes, his body lying motionless, the moment of impact, the feeling of helplessness. Every time she closes her eyes, it's there, haunting her. And the more time she spends with him, the more those images become real, as if the future is slipping closer and closer into view. It's not just the visions that torment her, though. It's the fact that she wants to be close to him. She wants to be the one to help him, to protect him from what's coming. And yet, every time she gets closer to him, she feels a deep sense of guilt and dread. Is she changing his fate by spending so much time with him? Is she pulling him toward that inevitable end just by being part of his life? She begins to withdraw, becoming more distant in their conversations. She finds herself looking for excuses to leave the room, to not be alone with him. She avoids his eyes, forcing herself to be professional, to maintain the boundary between them. But the more she pushes him away, the more he seems determined to pull her in. Paul's personal struggles. Paul starts to notice that something is off with Kristin. He can't explain it, but there's a distance in her eyes when she looks at him, a coldness that doesn't seem to match the way she treats others. He begins to feel like there's something she's not telling him, something she knows about him that she's not sharing. It's frustrating because he feels an undeniable connection to her, yet she keeps pulling back. Paul is not the kind of person who's easily deterred, though. He's been through enough hardships in his life to recognize when something's wrong, and he can't shake the feeling that Kristin is hiding something from him. He begins to dig deeper into her behavior, trying to find out what she knows. He starts to ask questions, not directly, but in a roundabout way, questions about her past, about her family, about why she's so guarded. But Kristin always deflects, always remains elusive. She changes the subject, or she gives him vague answers. This only fuels his curiosity, and he starts to dig into her life more. He's learned bits and pieces from the other students' rumors about her being different, about her being special, but he never thought it would be like this. He never thought she might have a secret that could affect him in ways he can't even comprehend. What Paul doesn't know is that he's already been affected by Kristin in ways that are beyond his understanding. His feelings for her continue to grow, despite the coldness she shows him. He feels like he can't escape the pull of her energy, and he finds himself thinking about her constantly. What is it about Kristin that makes him feel this way? Why does he trust her, despite her apparent distance? And why does he feel like she knows more about him than he does himself? This section explores the growing emotional complexity between Kristin and Paul, diving deeper into their internal struggles and developing their bond. Kristin's feelings for Paul challenge her professional detachment as a shaman, and Paul's increasing suspicion about Kristin's secrecy adds tension to their dynamic. Both are caught in a web of fate and desire, and the stage is set for even deeper emotional conflicts as their connection intensifies. Kristin's feelings for Paul have become undeniable, but as a shaman, she knows that interfering with someone's fate comes with profound consequences. At first, her professional detachment kept her from fully acknowledging the attraction she felt for him. But now, that detachment is slipping away, and she finds herself more invested in Paul's life than she's ever been in any of her clients. She feels torn between her shamanic duties and her growing affection for Paul. Her powers, which once seemed so controlled and impersonal, now feel like a double-edged sword, especially when it comes to someone she cares about. Every vision of his impending death cuts her deeper, and the more she learns about him, the more she realizes how connected she feels to him. She can no longer stand by and watch him face an inevitable fate. Kristin's internal struggle becomes her greatest challenge. She must decide whether to act on her feelings or remain detached, as all shamans must. However, as she digs deeper into the supernatural realm, she starts seeking ancient methods to alter fate. These methods are dangerous, often requiring powerful sacrifices or risky rituals. She visits old, forgotten temples, seeking guidance from ancient spirits and other shamans. Some offer cryptic advice, while others are willing to assist if Kristin is willing to give up a part of herself. Her search for answers takes her into mysterious and unsettling territories, where she encounters otherworldly beings who challenge her belief in fate. Kristin is faced with the possibility that changing Paul's destiny might require something far greater than she's prepared to give. She comes to the painful realization that in order to save him, she might need to sacrifice something deeply personal, perhaps her own life, powers, or even her connection to the spirit world. The idea of losing everything she's built frightens her, but her growing feelings for Paul push her to take these risks. The revelation Paul has grown increasingly curious and uneasy around Kristin. He notices the tension, the way she avoids him, and the distance she maintains despite their growing connection. Something about her seems different, and he can't shake the feeling that she knows more about him than she's letting on. He begins to suspect that she's hiding something, and his instincts tell him that whatever it is, it's not something to be ignored. One day, after a particularly tense interaction where Kristin seems unable to mask her concern for him, Paul confronts her. He demands the truth. What's really going on with her? Why does she act so differently? Why does she avoid him when they're obviously drawn to each other? Paul's voice trembles with urgency as he stands before Kristin, his eyes searching hers for any sign of truth. The room feels charged, heavy with the unspoken words that hang between them. Kristin feels her heart race, a mixture of dread and relief washing over her. She's known this moment would come, and now, there's no way to hide anymore. Her mind races, trying to find the right words, the ones that will explain without revealing too much. She can feel the pull of her own emotions, the ones she's kept hidden, fighting against the rational part of her that knows she should stay detached. But she's too close to him now, too involved. She begins, her voice shaky at first. But as she looks at him, her resolve begins to crumble. She can see the trust in his eyes, the raw need for honesty, and for the first time she realizes that she can't continue living in this dual existence. She can't keep pretending she doesn't care. I can't tell you everything, she says softly, her gaze dropping to the floor. But there are things about me, things you wouldn't understand, things I wish I could change, but I can't. Paul steps closer, his voice gentle but insistent. Why can't you just tell me? I deserve to know what's going on with you, Kristin. We're in this together now. You can't keep pushing me away. Kristin's breath catches in her throat, and she knows that she's at a crossroads. The choice she makes now will change everything. But even as the words linger on the tip of her tongue, she can feel the weight of her powers, the consequences of revealing too much. Can she risk everything for him? The room seems to close in on her as she looks up at Paul, a silent tear slipping down her cheek. I've seen your future, Paul, she whispers, and I'm afraid that if I tell you the truth, I might be the one to cause it. The confession hangs in the air, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. The truth is out there now. The connection between them has deepened in a way that neither can deny. And yet, they both know that this revelation is only the beginning of an even greater journey, one that will challenge everything they believe about fate, love, and the price of knowing too much. This turning point marks the start of their deeper connection and the unraveling of their intertwined fates. The secrets Kristin has kept hidden will soon be forced into the light, and Paul's role in this dark destiny will become all too clear. Asked chatgapped. Kristin, at first hesitant, finally admits the truth. She's a shaman, someone who can see the future, communicate with spirits, and alter destinies. She confesses that she's been hiding from him, not just because of her fear of rejection, but because she has seen his death in a vision. The revelation shocks Paul to his core, and initially, he is skeptical. His logical mind refuses to accept such mystical ideas. He has always been a rational person, and the thought that someone could predict his death seems absurd. Yet, there's something about Kristin's sincerity and the fear in her eyes that makes him wonder if there's more truth to her words than he's willing to admit. The revelation marks a turning point in their relationship. The emotional walls between them begin to crumble. Paul realizes the depth of Kristin's feelings for him, and though he remains wary of the supernatural, he can't ignore the bond they share. He starts to understand that Kristin has been struggling with her own fears, and that her detachment was not a sign of indifference, but rather a protective mechanism she used to keep him safe. This turning point deepens the emotional complexity of their relationship. As Paul starts to understand Kristin's struggle, the bond between them grows stronger, and their connection begins to evolve beyond the initial tension. Kristin's admission of her powers and her fears creates a new level of trust between them. However, Paul's skepticism about the supernatural remains, adding a layer of tension that makes their emotional journey even more intricate. The real challenge now is how both of them navigate this newfound understanding. Kristin is torn between her desire to protect Paul and her growing affection for him. Meanwhile, Paul, grappling with the strange truths that Kristin has revealed, begins to question everything he thought he knew about fate, love, and destiny. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, their relationship faces a pivotal moment. Will Kristin be able to overcome her fear of losing him by keeping her distance? Or will she find the strength to act on her feelings, regardless of the consequences? This new understanding allows them both to begin facing their fears together. Kristin agrees to share more of her powers with Paul, teaching him how to see glimpses of his future and understand the spiritual forces at work around him. She teaches him to embrace the unknown and trust in her guidance, as they begin to search for ways to prevent the tragedy she saw. Asked chatgapped. The final choice. As the climax of the story approaches, Paul's life begins to unravel. He starts experiencing bizarre occurrences that confirm Kristin's vision. Strange premonitions haunt him, and he feels an unshakable sense of dread. The threat to his life becomes more real, and Kristin's powers start to take their toll. She can no longer control the intensity of her visions, and she begins to lose her grip on her spiritual self. The more she fights to change his fate, the more she risks losing herself in the process. At the same time, Paul faces increasing danger. A supernatural force seems intent on claiming him, and Kristin realizes that the only way to alter his fate is to confront this force directly. However, Doing so would require a dangerous and risky ritual, one that could put both their lives at risk. The ritual could sever Kristin's connection to the spiritual world forever, but she is willing to take that risk to save Paul. In their final confrontation with fate, Kristin and Paul must decide whether they are willing to sacrifice everything, her powers, her identity, and their future together to change the inevitable. They face a critical choice. Will they accept their love as it is and let fate unfold, or will they fight against destiny at any cost? In the end, Kristin successfully alters Paul's fate, but not without consequences. The final ritual is intense and transformative, and as a result, Kristin loses much of her shamanic power. The supernatural forces she once relied on are no longer at her disposal, and her connection to the spirit world is weakened. But in saving Paul, she finds a new strength within herself. Their love proves to be a force that transcends fate, and the bond they share becomes a testament to their ability to shape their own future, despite the odds. Generated prompt image size 16:9. Though Kristin can no longer see the future with the same clarity, she learns that love and faith in one another are powerful enough to change the course of their lives. They decide to face whatever challenges lie ahead, not as shaman and client, but as partners, equal in their love and commitment to each other.